Welcome to the Justice Journal podcast. I'm Sacramento County District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert. I hope you enjoy this podcast series where we discuss important public safety issues and provide insight into who we are as an office and what we do both in the courtroom and in the community to provide the highest level of public safety through prosecution, prevention, and innovation.
In our last episode, we introduced the Elder Abuse Unit and what constitutes elder abuse crimes. In this episode, we'll continue the conversation with talking about the Elder Death Review Team. Well, there are obviously some elderly who die for various reasons. So, Paul, I'm going to ask you to talk about what we call EDIRT. Can you explain what that is and tell us what the purpose of that really is?
The EDIRT is just an acronym that somebody came up with and it stuck. What it is the Sacramento County Elder Death Review Team. And what this team does, it's a collaboration of county agencies and some community groups. We get together on, I think it's 9 times a year. So not every month, but 9 times a year. And we're led really by the coroner's office. I really have to give a shout out to the coroner's office. They do a wonderful job. Dr. Yeo has been with us for a number of years. And the coroner's office reviews every elder death that comes in through their office and determines if there's anything that may have been suspicious about the way this elder died. It comes to our team to review. And we review it for a couple of reasons. One is to see if there's any criminal activity that maybe was missed because law enforcement wasn't called out and there was no investigation done. And if that's true, then we try to initiate an investigation. We try to get law enforcement to start an investigation. Sometimes there is a law enforcement investigation, but they're stuck and need counsel as to what steps need to be taken to go from the investigatory stage to us being able to file charges. And so we will discuss the case and see if there's any. Sometimes, like there was one case we had where we really needed an expert to look at injuries to say, is this the kind of injury that happened that because there was some brutality or criminal negligence that went on with the caretaker, or was there a disease with this victim that contributed to these injuries that would absolve the caretaker? Sometimes it really comes down to experts being able to tell the difference. You can look at some photos that can look pretty bad, but then you find out later that because a person had a certain type of disease, that's the kind of disease that can create this kind of injury and documented swelling or abuse or damage to skin. So those are the kinds of things we do. But we also are looking at, in a bigger perspective, we're looking at the ways that elders die prematurely to see if there's any training or communication or community conversation that we can start that might be able to prevent premature deaths. Last year, we did a report to the County Board of Supervisors, and we found a number of factors that contributed to premature deaths. One was water safety. Something that people don't really think about a lot. If you have a pool in your backyard, when you're 25 years old and you know how to swim and you're proficient at it, it's probably not too dangerous. But if you have small children, it is very dangerous. You have to do special, fencing for your thing. If you have an elder who's in his 80s who's having trouble with balance, then that pool again can become a danger. And you should take precautionary steps to make sure that pool is protected with some kind of fencing. We had 2 elders in our last year's review that died because they tripped and fell near a pool and were unable to get back out of the pool because they had balance and mobility issues. But no one had thought about, putting a fence up around the pool. We've had some issues with oxygen-related deaths. It's not uncommon, especially if there's congestive heart failure going on in an elder and they're having breathing problems, to be prescribed oxygen. Oxygen is not flammable by itself, but if there is a flame around it, that is just pure energy for that flame. So there are some very strict precautions about when you should be around any kind of open flame. And occasionally elders either are not, the training about that is not reinforced so that it really doesn't sink in, or there are people that are around the elder with the oxygen that aren't trained on it, so they'll come in and light up a cigarette or something, and tragic things can happen. Also, which is perfect timing since we're recording this in July, the heat of Sacramento can be devastating. And, I have my own family that has their own issues with turning on the air conditioner. I don't want to waste the money, But when you're an elder, being able to take the heat, even though you think you might be able to take it and it feels good, you're actually losing perspiration, and you're losing the liquid in your body. You have to stay hydrated, and it's much better if you go, especially on days where it's over 100, if you go to a cool area to cool down at least for a few hours a day. So we've had some of issues with heat related deaths, and also when it comes to balance, elder deaths can occur because of falls. And I would recommend to anyone that has any elder in their family that's in a care facility, and you find out from the care facility that your elder has been subject to a fall, to make sure that your elder was checked by a doctor. We had a couple of cases where there were elders that fell in care facilities and there was no doctor intervention, and it turned out that there had been an impact to the head, and it caused an elder death. So just because you're in a care facility doesn't mean that every time there's a fall you're going to be checked by a doctor. That's something I'd always caution all family members to look up on, and if you find out there has been a fall, to take that extra step to maybe take your elder to a doctor just to make sure they're going to be okay.
So the elder death review team, they'll look at if there's any criminal factor, but then also if there are these accidents or situations you just described, is it training, public awareness? Is that also the goal when you find these cases where it could have been prevented, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. And I know that Fritz has gone out a number of times to community groups to give presentations. I myself have gone out to give presentations. A lot of times the groups that I go to, I don't know about you, Fritz, but the groups I go to always want to hear about the scams. What are the scams that are going on right now? What should I protect myself from?
They want to ask about scams. And it's also funny. It's always at a Denny's usually. Who knows why? But, they want to know about scams. And they also have very, very particular questions about certain circumstances that they might be experiencing or someone in their life might be experiencing. And I have to be very careful, as you know, because in my role, we are only advocates in terms of charges that are filed. We can't give advice to people. We can't give them any kind of civil advice, certainly. So
you can't give them any legal advice.
Legal advice at all, correct. And so we're always, or at least I'm always approached at these various meetings and presentations to sort of opine on a given certain set of facts, and I have to decline in those circumstances. But yes, we get out there a lot of questions about the scams, because they are so typical and they're all so common now. Everybody has a cell phone. Seems like every other call you get on your cell phone is some kind of scam, or it might seem to be some kind of scam. And so people are very concerned about it. I'd also add too, if we're just going to kind of be talking about scams, one of the big ones that I've seen, and we've had a couple cases on it, are these things called romance scams. And romance scams are basically where at Match.com or any of these other type of websites, an elder person, and unfortunately we're dealing with a lot of people that have lost, that are lost loved ones, lost their husband, lost their wife. So they're on these Match.com sites and they're finding profiles. We've seen that once they engage with a profile, that profile will be erased. They won't know that though, and they'll start getting phone calls, and they'll seem real. They'll have 916 area codes oftentimes. They're voice over internet calls, and so. But the victim won't know it, so they'll be very trusting and think the whole thing's real, that they're developing a relationship with the person on the other end of the line. that person on the other end of the line is a scammer, and they'll start asking them for various things, money here and there, usually small amounts. Then all of a sudden, they're going to be somewhere in the world, Thailand, Nigeria, just pick a country, they could be there. And they're going to say, I'm stuck there, I need help, send money, send goods.
Are they talking at this point, or is this all
It's a physical, it's a real conversation with a real person. It's not a robot. And they are very, very convincing scams. Most victims, when they're discovered by law enforcement, it's not the victims that report it. It'll be a family member. And even when you go to talk to the victim about it, they won't believe that it's actually a scam. You have to show them that it is and how much they are being taken advantage of. We've had people lose, you were talking about life savings before, hundreds of thousands of dollars in these kind of scams. And they are very prevalent, and they're very easy to pull off with today's technology. So that's just a big one out there. And I think a lot more people are getting involved, just given the longevity, given some of the isolation and the technology that we have now. I think they're going to be here to stay, pretty typical.
And Paul said those are challenging cases, though, because they're all over the country. They're not
the world. Usually they have to
be.
be prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney
Right.
because they're outside of our jurisdiction to be able to find them. But when Fritz and I go out and give these presentations, we also try to talk to them about all of these safety preventions, so that they get the full educational experience when we come out and talk.
Tell us about how people can get a speaker out, as you guys talked about. How can they have someone come out and speak to a group through our Speakers Bureau? You want to talk about that?
Sure. Well, we have a Speakers Bureau in the DA's office, and I don't have the number off the top of my head. We should get that.
It's just go to sacda.org.
There you go.
There's a Speakers Bureau link right there.
I'm glad somebody knows it off the top of their head. Anyway, so we'll get contacted in the community. And I'll get a notification. Usually it's an email just to go speak at an event, and I'll accept it almost every time if I don't have a court case going on at the time. So that's usually my conflict. But if I do,
what do you cover? Is it based on what they want, or do you just kind of cover a whole gamut of topics for them?
I can. Well, I'm going to try to focus on the elder abuse. Right. Those are the ones I'm going to get. But I can cover. I have experience in this office in a number of units. So if a question comes about robberies, burglaries, I can talk to that a little bit. Done a homicide trial, so I can talk to homicides. I can talk to DUIs, some different types, not just elder abusive crimes. I could speak to some of those. But typically what people want to know about are the scams. Mm-hmm. But I'll also talk about, most people don't know that there is an elder abuse statute that's actually on the books. People don't know that. I talk about that, what it is, what it covers. I talk about the types of cases we do. I talk about the volume of cases that we're dealing with, which I can say because we've run the numbers pretty recently from 2012 to now, we've seen about 150% increase in our filed cases on elder abuse. So this is a problem that is expanding. I could talk about that. I also talk about some of the demographic trends in the county, which is also increasing in terms of our elder population, 65 plus. So if I get called out there, I'll talk about those things. I'm not shy about taking questions, and we'll also go anywhere they ask us for the most part, right? Yeah. So I wasn't kidding about Denny's. I've had meetings at Denny's or various senior living facilities or apartment complexes in their common area.
So we will go out, and we have Speakers Bureau for all different topics for the elder abuse, like all the others, any group, any community group, we can send speakers out. Do you also provide warnings? So if you have a family member and the victim is not sure if there's starting to be behaviors or things that are signs that financial abuse is happening, or, do you give them, because I think it would be hard to really look for those things for a family member if it's someone you trust. Do you kind of help with that kind of thing? If you notice this, I think that would be a hard conversation to have.
Well, just to answer that, to start it here, the cases that we get, they're already past all the warning signs, right? So if there's already been a 911 call, there's already been a warrant or police investigation, we're already past the warning sign stage. So in terms of the daily job that we have here that we on a daily basis deal with, those cases are already filed. But when we do go out and talk to the community groups, there are warning signs, and there are at least some typical things that at least raise warning bells for me in my mind. If I see a 30, 40, 50-year-old son, daughter, grandchild in the house with a vulnerable victim, if that person has any kind of drug issues, if that person has any kind of mental health issues, again, I'm not trying to discriminate against anybody that has those issues,
Right.
but I am saying these are potential warning signs where people could potentially be abused. Are they isolated? Are they talking to family? Are they having unexplained bruising, which honestly can happen to elderly people and they're not being abused. But when you see some of these factors all popping up together, that's when we got to start being worried and potentially think about just notifying APS, like, hey, there may be an issue here.
Adult Protective Services.
Yes, Adult Protective Services, correct.
Okay.
And Adult Protective Services is a free service. A lot of people are afraid that they're going to get, charged something after they come and visit. And they're completely voluntary. In other words, they'll come out, and if you say, you know what, I don't want your help anymore, they'll say, okay. So that it's very, very different than, say, Child Protective Services. It's a very different way of doing business, and the rights of the elders are very different when it comes to Adult Protective Services. And they have some great people that really care about the elders in this community, and they have all sorts of resources that they can give to elders that can help them not just prevent, ever having to meet Fritz and Bridgid, even though they're the nicest people. You really don't want to meet them in court, right? The whole idea is that you don't really want to meet us during business hours. So they have a lot of preventative tools, a lot of educational things that they can help people with, and a lot of resources that can help them out.
So Adult Protective Services, any other agencies or organizations that are good resources out there for information, or somebody feels like there's some victimization going on?
Yeah, there's McGeorge Law School. So they have 2 law clinics out of there that work with 65 and older. One is specifically for seniors. So they assist, they'll look over a case and see if it's something they can help with. If not, refer out. And so that's a really great resource, especially too for family when they're looking at maybe power of attorney, conservatorship, how to get finances, figure out who is taking this money, where is it coming from. We have the Senior Safe Center, which is a homeless shelter for seniors. It's a quaint little house with few rooms, run by a really lovely lady. So it's a very quiet, safe environment. So if someone needs to get out of a DV situation or a situation where their child won't leave the house, adult child, there is that house.
Is that like a crisis type situation?
I believe you can stay there for maybe a month, but I don't want to.
Oh, okay.
Only, yeah.
I took a tour of the place. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah,
I would be happy.
It's like isn't it like an old
place
Sacramento Victorian type?
No, it's not really Victorian. It's
Oh.
actually a really well-maintained, very nice house in a nice area.
Any other advice, tips,
Well,
resources, suggestions?
The other thing that I would say, and it kind of goes back to some of the cases that we've seen in EDRT, some of them are, you look at these photographs and these people have terrible pressure ulcers on their body all the way down to the bone, and you're thinking to yourself, how did this happen? How could somebody get to this state of neglect? And it's because nobody took the time to just see them, look at them, notice these wounds, and then take appropriate either medical action, taking people to the hospital, or in certain cases calling 911. Just that intervention a little earlier is enough to potentially save a life, and then not end up in the EDRT review where we're all sitting around looking at these photographs, talking to the experts, trying to figure out how could this death have been prevented, or is there a prosecutable crime here potentially. So people need to be more vigilant, need to use emergency services, use APS. I think the Family Justice Center is another thing that I think people can go to for help with all these different types of issues. But it really just takes a little bit of vigilance and a willingness to let either emergency services get involved, APS, or someone. Just don't sit there and not reach out for help. That's like the main takeaway I think people should recognize when they're thinking about these issues.
And there are some elders that, they have somebody in their home, they want to get them out, they don't know how to do it. They
Family member or just...
it could be a family member, or it can be somebody who was there to help them. and now they want them out and the person won't leave, and they say, I don't know, I told them to leave, they won't leave. What should I do? You can go down to the family courthouse. You can ask for the Family Justice Center. They have free civil legal help that'll help you with a restraining order. And they have process servers that'll serve the restraining order for you. And there's been a couple of times where we've had seniors come down to the Family Justice Center, go through that process, and then tell the Family Justice Center advocate, I don't feel safe going back to the house right now. So they actually called up the senior safe center and took them right to the safe center.
Wow.
And made sure that they were safe and that the person was out of the house before they came back. So there are some really good services that a lot of people just don't know about them.
And on top of the Family Justice Center has transportation. So for our older adults who don't drive or maybe no longer feel comfortable driving or going into a city, they have 2 vans where they can then also help with that piece.
Wow.
So that's invaluable because we know when coming to court, a lot of our victims don't even want to testify just because they don't want to drive downtown to come on these busy streets.
Yeah.
And
That's often the time when we'll have a little resistance to them
Yes.
wanting to come in. They'll tell us, like, I can't even get to court. I can't go upstairs. I'll have to use the bathroom 100 times. Those kind of things. We get told that quite often, I would say, when people are not really wanting or unable to come and testify.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we've seen it all before.
And we have several answers to all of that.
Right.
Yeah,
You have the solution to all those
Yeah.
problems.
Most of it,
I
yes.
can say at least up till now, I don't think anyone's successfully not testified
Yes.
because of one of those reasons. And it hasn't been a horrible experience, I don't think, for any of them either.
Right.
It's just a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
You know, so that fear.
Yeah. Anything else that we haven't covered that you want to share or add?
As the victim advocate, we're here to provide service, answer questions, walk them through the court process. California has the California Victim Compensation Board, so we will assist them through the application. We have our own internals claim department here in the office, so we can expedite applications rather than it having to go straight to the state. And in that's really helpful when it comes to the seniors. I've found paying for medical bills when maybe Medi-Cal, Medicare won't cover all of it. Most often used is the home security. So they can get up to $750. And that's the one I encourage the most often, because if they've gotten to a point that they no longer want the defendant living with them, then it means adding locks to the door, changing the locks, adding maybe cameras, sensors. So because these individuals are climbing through windows even though there's a restraining order. So now you're reinforcing the windows. We've had some really serious, and when we say mental health and addiction, it's the untreated. And these family members know they've been trying to get that adult into treatment. They're not willing to go. They can't force them. So this is someone that's probably actively psychotic or active in their addiction. And so a piece of paper restraining order means nothing to them. And they are trying to access that house no matter what, whether it be living in the garage or the shed. And so home security has been really helpful. I mean, we've had families who have added like reinforced steel front doors so that their child can't get in.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do have kind of a thought on, well, not on that particularly, but in terms of summing up thoughts. This is not a problem that's going to go away. It's a problem that's or an issue, I should say, that we as a society, not just as a DA's office, because oftentimes we're the ones trying to essentially rehabilitate or punish the perpetrator.
Too late.
It's too late in the
Right.
process. Mm-hmm. Society needs to address these things. But in terms of the numbers, I think I already stated that our caseload here has gone up 150% in a very short amount of time.
Is that because the elder population is growing?
It's part of it. The elder population right now in 2012 was about 12% of Sacramento County. Right now it's about 16%, and very shortly it's going to be 20%. And each percentage is another 15,000 people. There's about 1.5 million people in Sacramento right now. So this is a victim population that is growing literally by the thousands every day. And it's an issue that we have to address as the DA's office, that law enforcement has to get together and address properly. They all have to be acting together in addressing the problem. And that involves APS, that involves the civil courts and the restraining orders. So it's a big and growing area of the law that I think has a lot of areas that we can address moving forward.
So is that prevention, public awareness, those kinds of things?
Yeah, it's all of it. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about some of the laws that I think should be adjusted. Mm-hmm. So it's from a legal side. It's from a prosecution side, making sure that we are holding the abusers accountable, and be that through a rehab program of some sort, if it's appropriate, or if you have a repeat offender that really just needs to not be in society because every time they are, they perpetuate violence against somebody. We need to make sure those people are handled properly. APS, I know the resources devoted to APS are significantly less than CPS. And if you ask them, I think a lot of them would say they're underfunded. So there's an area we need improvement in. And also our law enforcement agencies here in Sacramento, Sheriff's Department, our police, and our surrounding agencies. All of them, in my opinion, should have a unit in their office that deals with crimes against elders. Not all of them do. And so these are areas I think as a county we can do a better job of looking at and addressing, because it's a problem that's not getting going away, it's getting worse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Paul, any closing thoughts?
Well, I think we pretty much said it all. The best way to reduce elder abuse is prevention. Mm-hmm. Before you make a decision as to who's going to take care of the elder people in your family, if you're going to go to a service or you're going to go to somebody's friend, do some background. What experience does this person actually have in taking care of an elder? If there's somebody that's even if it's somebody in your family that you trust, if you can spend that extra time once or twice a week stopping by to check to make sure everything's okay, it's just going to pay dividends.
Even that person knowing that someone's checking, that someone's sort of watching what you're doing, I think.
And it's so much easier now with the technology that's available to us.
Right.
FaceTime, all of those things. So it's not even just phone calls. You can see them physically, which kind of helps determine a level of care. Mm-hmm. So someone can't just put somebody on the phone and say, yes, I'm doing fine. Yeah. In reality, they may not be. Now that you can see them in a photograph or a picture or video, I think that that's on the prevention side. That's definitely really good tip, for sure.
Sounds like there's a lot of different people who need to be involved in making sure that elders are being protected. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we covered everything. So thanks, everybody, very much. I think it was very interesting. And I know that the public is always wanting to know more about elder abuse and especially all the scam information. So again, if anyone's interested in having someone come out and talk about elder abuse or any other criminal justice topic, go to our website at sacda.org and look under Speakers Bureau. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Join us for our next episode where we'll examine the 1993 through early 2000s cold case coined the Second Story Rapist.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find all of the Justice Journal podcasts on our website at sacda.org, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube.